We're back. Seven Rivers Racing. I'm Dan Dyker along with Al Losi. Brent Kirchner, the City Auto Sales number 8 late model driver from the La Crosse Fairgrounds Speedway, finishing in the top 3 in points this year. We were talking about who won the ASA Oktoberfest 100 race. One side says Johnny Sauter, the other side says Travis Sauter. The ASA is standing by due to conflicting reports, their statement that Johnny Sauter gets no points, gets no money. We penalized, a little bit of cash coming out of the pocket, but they're claiming as of today, another release came out. They're staying consistent that Johnny Sauter won the race. Called the La Crosse Fairgrounds Speedway, talked to Chuck Deary. He doesn't want this thing blown up. He hopes It doesn't get blown up, which I totally understand that. But they're standing by their end of things, and in their record books, Travis Sauter will be the Oktoberfest 100 race winner. And it was interesting. I asked Chuck, I said, okay, so bottom line is who won the race? He said the Sauters did.
That was excellent.
Johnny and Travis. So it's going to be, hopefully this is one of those things, it's there and it dies down and it goes away. As we bring Brent Kirchner in as well, what do you think that brought to the races this year, having Johnny Sauter come in? I mean, you've been there when Jimmy Johnson's been there and Matt Kenseth has been there. You know, do you think it added any flavor as you're down in the pits to people saying, wow, Johnny Sauter's here, let's see what he can do?
I think so. I mean, whenever you get Johnny Sauter up here, you're going to have a good show. And I didn't mention earlier that he did have a problem making it through tech. The car was a little bit too wide. So when he brings a car to the racetrack, you know you've got to contend with him as a win. But I think it brings a lot to the show. You know, I think you know, he's in the middle of a big truck battle with the points. So I think it's pretty cool to have him up here.
Alrighty, well, that's all we're going to say about that. That's done. We're not going to talk about that anymore because let folks talk how they want to talk. And one has a winner and one doesn't have. You're always a winner in my heart, though.
Oh, thank you.
You're in my record books. Coming off of a very disturbing weekend in the IndyCar Series, we had the passing of Dan Wheldon, your Indianapolis 500 race winner. Matter of fact, I just had him on my WKTY AM 580 Race Report show 4 weeks ago. Did a nice interview. This was soon after Danica Patrick announced she was going to run a full NASCAR nationwide series scheduled next year, which we're going to touch on that in a couple of moments as well. And we talked about Road America, how it was one of his favorite racetracks. And then I was sitting there in my living room watching the race happen last weekend, and I really didn't know how to break that thing down. And again, Brent's been racing in many tracks throughout his entire race career. It was very sad to see Dan Wheldon go, left a couple of young kids and a beautiful wife behind. You know, I've seen a lot of reports, I've seen a lot of articles come out, and one was Jimmy Spencer we're going to break down here in a minute. But, Brent, the bottom line, you put 34 cars on a 1.5-mile track that are topping out 225 miles per hour. Was that destined to be bad?
I think so. I think if you watch the show, I mean, they talked about a lot of the drivers being a little bit, you know, nervous going in. That many cars, that fast, 1.5-mile track, they don't need to be going 220 miles an hour around there. It's just crazy.
And you can see the speed that he carried, and he was at the end of the accident. The Indy cars have something that NASCAR doesn't have, and that's the push to pass. It's the nitrous thing that they can stick into their motor at any time. And a bunch of us were sitting around, and it looked almost like he may have hit that button just before the crash.
And just catapulted and went 200 yards straight in the air.
And he wasn't able to slow down because he was so far behind the accident that nitrous probably hadn't cleared out of his motor yet, and that's what catapulted him, because his closing rate was enormous, and he hit 3 cars that shoved him up into the air like that.
You and off camera, you and Brent were talking about safety issues, and the ironic part of this is Dan Wheldon had tested the cars that are coming out for Indy in 2012, and then we have his passing last weekend, and it brought to mind safety measures. And you two had a kind of a good point. You were talking about some kind of a cage in which these drivers can be in, but then, you know, we'll kind of explain what you had heard cage-wise, and then Brent had talked about cage or no cage. There's going to be results.
Well, what I've heard is that Formula One, which is an open cockpit similar to the Indy cars, what they're doing is they're testing a cockpit similar to what jet fighters use, where they have some kind of a Lexan cage for them, and what they've done is they've experimented shooting a tire at 150 miles an hour. It doesn't harm the thing. My issue, and Brent can speak to this, if something like that comes out, there is so much that people don't realize comes at that window, including oil, greases, stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Tire compounds, pieces of tire are constantly hitting that, and there's no way of cleaning it off or spreading that out around you. And just from that point of view, how would you view that?
You know, I think the end result, why this happened last weekend, was the speed that they were carrying, and they were on a 1.5 mile track, and the catch fence is what killed them. I mean, that's what it was. Blunt trauma to the head, so that's what got him.
But overall, if you're driving and your head is exposed, you're seeking a greater risk of something like this. Now, it doesn't happen every day. I mean, it's been quite a while since we've had a fatality in either IndyCar or NASCAR. But as you had said off camera, your head is exposed. It's a whole different world.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, honestly, if you were to run a cup car around there at 220 miles an hour and shoot them into the catch fence, there's going to be some problems there also. But I think it was just purely that the cockpit was open. I mean, and the way it looked, he kind of went in head first. I mean, nothing's good going to come of that.
And because of how society is and fans are and sponsors and things like that, they absolutely don't want to see these things happening. And Dale Earnhardt was the big wake-up call for NASCAR. They completely changed how those cars are, where the driver sits and where all the safety stuff is. I know that the Indy Racing League does things actually beyond what NASCAR does in some levels. They bring their own medical staff to the track and things like that. But I think this will be the wake-up call for the Indy cars to do something. I know that they have some kind of a car of tomorrow coming in the next couple of years, but I think that this is going to just ramp that up to protect the driver's head, just like you said.
Yeah, and this was going to be the last oval other than Indy that they were going to go to. So I mean, they were
I know that they had taken 3 or 4 off their schedule for next year.
Right. So they saw what was coming, but just a little too late.
Last race of the season was at Las Vegas. We're going to talk more about that when we come back. Brent Kirchner drives the City Auto Sales number 8 Quick Trip NASCAR late model, along with Al Ossie. I'm Dan Dyker. This is the Seven Rivers Racing Show on KQEG TV.